Okay, so hopefully you've had a bit of fun trying to prove that your parents and your siblings do actually have other minds, and you've kind of played around with that argument and illustrated the argument from analogy with your own case. Okay, so well, that all seems quite straightforward and common sense stuff, but what are the criticisms? Okay, right. There's two criticisms that I want you to consider. First of all, you're drawing an analogy just from a single case, and the argument would be that's just bad reasoning. I know that I have I know that I have this relationship between my mind and my body, and my actions and my mind. So I know so therefore I then draw the analogy that all people therefore must have the same thing going on. Everyone I see that looks like me. So from one single case, you're creating this analogy. And the argument with that's a bad argument. That's a bad argument because, well, let's just look at this one. There's a black swan. Therefore, all swans are black. So from a single case of seeing a black swan, you then draw the analogy, therefore, all swans are black. Clearly, that's an invalid argument. It's a bad argument. So the criticism is that analogy from a single case is not sound, and therefore we shouldn't accept it. The second criticism to consider is that for analogy to be sound, there needs to be ways actually of making independent checks. Yes, we can use the analogy, but there needs to be ways that we can check, at least in principle, that things are the case. So, for example, I believe that observe that your body is similar to mine, and therefore I know that I have a heart. I can feel it, hear it beating inside of me, and so therefore I look at you, see you're similar, and by analogy I think, okay, you must have a heart too. And this is reasonable, and then this is a reasonable way of using an analogy because actually I can go and independently check. I could go up and listen to you, and there's the heart. I can hear it beating away, or even in theory, so someone could come along and cut us open, or cut you open and see there's a heart there. Yeah, and the point is that in theory, or in practice, and possibly even in theory, it's possible to check. However, the analogy that you're making for minds just simply isn't possible, not even in theory. There's no way that anyone could just get inside you and check that you've got another mind. So therefore, the analogy is a weak one because it's not able to be checked or verified in any possible way. Okay, so there's two really issues with other minds. There's the epistemological one, which is how can I know that other minds exist? And that's the one that I think we should focus on for now. How can we know that other minds exist given the dualist nature? Of course, it's worth pointing out at this point, if we're not dualists, and then minds are just physical things, the same as brains, then the problem goes away because it just becomes a problem. Well, how do we know that other things exist? And then the problem of other minds is no more pressing than the problem of how do we know the physical world exists? And as long as we don't end up in heavy skepticism, we can posit the existence of the physical world, we can verify it, and therefore we know that other minds exist because they're just physical things. But it's only a real deep problem for the dualist, because the dualist, can say, you understand that other bodies exist, yeah, you can do that, you can see them, and the problem of the external world, as long as you can get beyond skepticism, is there. But then you can't go further and actually go into other minds to tell they exist. So there is a specific problem here for the dualist. This is really what I think we should focus on for the time being. Of course, as we get better at this subject and move into next year, there is also the conceptual problem, and this is one that very much Wittgenstein explores. And by all means, read the content in the textbook on this, which is actually just the concept of other minds makes sense. So, there's a conceptual problem with what's going on here. But we're going to, I'm not going to focus on that at the moment. That will be a challenge for next year or for additional reading that you want to do. Okay, so we have explored the argument for analogy. We have then given some possible criticisms. Think how you can respond back to them. There is examples in the book, and I think most of you will probably be able to respond to the two criticisms, and I look forward to seeing your responses. However, there is another very powerful argument, and this is the best hypothesis argument. Okay, so I just want you to imagine a case. You see someone walking down the street. So, there I am. I'm looking out, and I see a person walking down the street there she is, playing with her phone. And I think, okay, what's going on here? Let's see if we can create some hypotheses, or call them scenarios, but really let's have a few hypotheses on what is going on as I see this person walking down the street towards me. Okay. That should be robot, not robot. So maybe there's a robot programmed to look like a human being. So maybe this is what's going on. So think of the sci-fi films. There's this robot walking down the street towards me, and it's been programmed. It's not human at all. There's no mind there. It's a robot. That could be one scenario. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe it's an alien. Maybe an alien has flown in from a distant galaxy, fascinated to see what these human things are, and decided to get out amongst them. Has taken on the form of human, but actually this is an alien. It doesn't have a mind. Certainly not like what we would call a mind. Certainly no human mind. And so this person walking down the street, coming towards, and I think, oh yeah, maybe that's an alien. There's no mind in there at all. Now you might think, oh well, they're really far fetched, but okay, let's have a bit more of a philosophical response scenario. Maybe it's a philosophical zombie. So walking towards us is a fully functioning body, but there's just no mind. There's no mind going on there. Maybe it's possible. We certainly can't be certain about it because we can't look inside mind. So we have no way of knowing that. So therefore, it is a theoretical possibility. So we've got three possible hypotheses for what's going on. Hang on. Well, let's really get into a bit. Think about other conceptual possibilities. Well, maybe I'm dreaming. And there's this woman. I see this woman walking towards me. Maybe it's just neurons in my head as I sleep. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe it's kind of there's a hologram or something. Someone is projecting a hologram onto the pavement coming towards me. Yeah, that's possible, isn't it? Certainly possible. All these different possible things could be happening. Or actually, maybe one possibility is that other minds do exist, and there's another human being who is similar to me walking down the street. Okay, so the argument goes, let's look at all the different possible explanations for what's going on when I see this body walking down the street. What's going on? What are the possibilities? Well, yeah, all of these things are possible. By the way, not Robert. There is a robot walking down the street. So all of these things are possible. But actually, come on, what is the most likely? What's the best hypothesis? So if we accept the first hypothesis of the robots, well, we're really going to struggle with our relationships and we're going to be deadly paranoid. Similarly, with number two, we're really going to start acting differently if the people upstairs aren't our family. Maybe they're aliens. Philosophical zombie, again, the implications for this are really quite profound, because if everyone is a philosophical zombie, well, you're the only mind that exists, and that really has big implications on how you live your life, isn't it? If you're the only mind, if you're dreaming, well, surely you should concentrate on trying to wake up so you can live life. Maybe not. If you're hallucinating, you need to obviously get to a more lucid state. So all of these scenarios are not good scenarios apart from the last one. It's the best possible. It's the best possible explanation. And if you've got lots of different explanations, even though there are intellectual issues and problems with number 6, well, surely it's the best, though. It's the best, maybe the best of a bad bunch, or but nonetheless, it is the best. And certainly you'd be an idiot if you didn't believe 6, surely. Okay, so, right. I hope that is helpful in trying to bring out the issues. So I'd like you really now to do 2 tasks. First of all, I'd like you to do a short explanation of the argument from analogy. Draw on your own personal illustration like you did in that first task. So I'd like you to write that, maybe half a page. And if you can, submit that ASAP. Just get that one done, small task. But then I'd like you to focus on now a decent essay question, a full 20-mark question on, can we know other minds exist? Again, we're going to go into more detail on this, but I'd like you to do this, a substantial piece of work. I'd like you, this is your Easter holiday piece of work. If you could read page 231 to 245. That covers what the content I've given, plus also the content we're going to look at next year. Don't stress if the stuff beyond what I've done with you doesn't make any sense. Focus on the elements that you can get your head around at this stage. So I'd like you to do the reading, then spend a bit of time thinking. I'd like you to do further research. Some really nice examples of further research coming through. Then a bit more thinking. Don't just give further research. Make sure you're fusing what we're doing in the lessons with what's in the textbook, and then add in your own understanding through further research. So pulling it all together, trying to bring on multiple sources. Then I'd like you to write an essay plan. What would be a good essay plan? Bringing out, maybe 3 or 4 different arguments, one way or another, sort of nice responses back to them as well. So you make an argument, you then, a paragraph making the argument, then maybe a shorter paragraph responding, evaluating it, and then responding back. And then develop a few different paragraphs, a few different arguments, and then try and reach a conclusion. Can we know that other minds exist? Yes, no. And what's the strongest argument, one way or another? So we're really now trying to bring the stuff, your philosophical thinking together. And I think this is the first time I've asked you to do a 25 marker. So do give it some serious time. You should be spending, at least 2-3 hours, maybe even 4 hours over Easter, really developing this work and then handing in a high quality piece. If anyone wants to contact me during the Easter break, I can mark a draft and then give you ideas on how to improve it. Then you can send me work during the Easter break to mark. But then the formal date for hand-in will be the first Tuesday back after the 2 weeks Easter. As always, if there is anyone that is undergoing particular difficulties at home, do make contact with me so I can support you as best. Okay, all the best. Take care.